Best ball is king right now, but we don't always have time to watch an hour-long draft stream, so I'm bringing you all the information you'd get in one of those, condensed into 8 minutes. All my strategy, player takes, and thinking at every pick as I try to win big in 2024 Best Ball. This draft is from a DraftKings $8 Engage 8 150 max entry contest. Closed already, but I wanted to get more entries in, so did a slow draft and piled in a few more just as things were closing. Pick number 112, this was a wide receiver heavy round 1, like a lot of drafts are at the minute. I'm drafting a lot of 0 RB teams, but I still think that this is a good year for Hero RB, and I also think that we can make a strong argument that Jahmyr Gibbs should be drafted as highly as Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson. The knock on Gibbs was that he might not get enough red zone work, but last year he had 38 red zone touches to David Montgomery's 52, and a lot of that improved as the season went on. So I like his chances to eat into that further this year, and he's one of a few running backs available who could go for either 100 receiving yards or 100 rushing yards in any game. That's massive on DraftKings because of the 3-point bonuses you get for hitting those lines. At the 201, I went with Brandon Ayuk. If you've watched this channel before, you know I prefer Deebo Samuel at cost. But I like the Week 17 correlation that this pick gives me, or perhaps Ayuk gets traded, and then I'd be way more comfortable taking him at this cost anyway. When the draft spins back to me at the 312, this is a really good time to add an elite stack, so I take Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson. We've made one bet on a second-year player in Jahmyr Gibbs already, and I'm happy to make another one here. Yes, Mark Andrews was out injured when Zay Flowers really had his biggest performances, but rookie's coming on strong. That's a perfectly normal thing to happen. It happens all the time, and Zay Flowers can absolutely take another step forward this year. Lamar, I mean, obviously, it's just an easy click here. Yes, I did take him as the QB1 ahead of Josh Allen, but the difference doesn't feel that big to me. I think we could easily see another QB1 season overall from Lamar, and particularly with the wide receiver depth chart being what it is in Buffalo, I'm not afraid to take shots on quarterbacks like Lamar ahead of Allen if it gives me a stack like this. At the 512, I had George Kittle. Yes, George Kittle is 30 years old, be 31 by the time the season ends, but Travis Kelce's 34, and he's been killing it in his early 30s, so let's not write off George Kittle just yet, and I really like the elite tight ends this year. Kittle had 7 top 5 finishes in 2023, while also going missing for 7 finishes outside the top 20, so while I'm fully in on the massive weeks he can give us, I'm also always thinking with George Kittle that I might want this to be a free tight end build. James Cook is the pick at the 601. Normally if I've gone hero running back like we did to start this draft, then I want to push that second one further to like round 8, round 9, or even round 10 before I take my next one. But Cook's ADP is 49.4, so falling 13 spots to me here, it's too much of a value to pass up. At the back of the 7th round, it's Brock Purdy time. We've made our bet on the Niners with Ayuk and Kittle, so now we have to hope that Ayuk doesn't get traded. Perhaps it's Deebo Samuel who gets traded instead, and now we have the really powerful parts of the Niners passing game in Ayuk and Kittle stacked with Brock Purdy. So through 7 rounds, I have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 quarterbacks, and an elite tight end. I honestly prefer to have more wide receivers in this in just about any draft. I want 4 through 7 rounds or 5 through 9 rounds at a bare minimum. And that's something I go on about a lot when we're streaming these drafts. So we've got a lot of catching up to do, but in this draft, it felt like a gamble worth taking because our quarterback position's sorted now, and we've got 2 really high power stacks. So let's see what it looks like when we finish it up. Next, I've got to concentrate on wide receiver, so I go 3 straight with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Curtis Samuel, and Romeo Doubs. Another second-year player in JSN, starting to see a theme here. I'm in on these players. Curtis Samuel builds out more of a non-quarterback stack with James Cook, banking on another good offense. And then Romeo Doubs gives us another wide receiver before the position just goes over a cliff edge in the double-digit rounds. So after a couple of picks ago feeling quite worried about my wide receiver position, it's not all the way sorted yet, but it feels a lot better than it did. Rounds 11 and 12. This is a sweet spot in the draft for running backs. Year after year, we see plenty of good running backs come out of this range. So take Rico Dowdle and Zach Charbonnet, 2 players that they haven't really shown it all just yet, but they're at worst running back 2s in their backfields, and they'd have a clear path to massive workloads if anything happened to Zeke Elliott or Kenneth Walker ahead of them. And of course, it's another second-year player in Zach Charbonnet. Some of these year 2 breakouts, they might not happen, but if I'm not getting rookies, which is something I've largely missed out on so far, then second-year players are almost as good a bet. Speaking of rookies, We're still light at wide receiver, so double tapping two fun, high potential rookies in Jermaine Burton and Malachi Corley, it makes a lot of sense here. Both of them got third round draft capital, they have clear paths to playing snaps this year because of the depth charts that they're on, and if they can come on strong over the second half of the year, it'll really help cover bye weeks. Round 15, Isaiah Likely. It makes sense for the stack, it makes sense for the team needing more tight ends, and it makes sense because there's plenty of talk coming out of Ravens OTAs that the Ravens want to use more two tight end sets, get Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely on the field at the same time together, something they used to do when they had Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews a few years ago. Khalil Herbert saw a stacked box rate of 31% in 2023. Defenses knew what was coming with him, but with Caleb Williams there, under center, that could change, and I just don't believe in DeAndre Swift. This is also a hedge that perhaps Herbert gets traded. He's the easiest one for the Bears to move on from, and if they're confident in Roschon Johnson as the RB2, perhaps they do, and Herbert lands on a team where he can take advantage more. So through 16 rounds, I'm now at 2 QB, 5 RB, 7 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends. At this point, I'm pretty happy with how things look. This feels good to me, and I feel comfortable with this build. I'm going to want to add another tight end, and then maybe a bit more wide receiver or running back depth, but obviously quarterback has long since been sorted out. Round 17, I'd hoped Rashad Bateman was going to fall to me, particularly given the steady stream of hype around him, but he went at the 1504 earlier, so instead we'll pivot, take Devontae Walker, another rookie wide receiver. He fits a mold that the Ravens don't really have on the roster already, and a big-bodied downfield threat, something Lamar Jackson specifically told the team he wanted to add to their wide receiver room. Perhaps he doesn't offer that much through the season, but a couple of big play weeks, and we're golden. 1801, it's time to sort the tight end room out for good before things get really ugly. Take Mike Gesicki. Joe Burrow's made a lot of tight ends look really good, and with Gesicki, he gets one who predominantly plays wide receiver. In his pass-first offense, I think that could be something which we want to lean into. The only tight ends going after my pick with Darren Waller, Tucker Kraft, Michael Mayer, Dawson Knox, Jelani Woods, and Theo Johnson. Give me Mike Gesicki over any of them all day. 1912, Evan Hull. Our final running back, and this is one which I felt more confident in when I made the pick than I do now a couple of days later. There has been a steady stream of Trey Sermon hype out of Colts camp saying that he's the clear RB2. I thought that Hull would be the RB2 going into this season. Trey Sermon has done nothing for a couple of years. So it's a pick that I'll be a little bit more wary of going forward, and maybe there could have been a better pick here. 2001, our final pick. It's all dart throws down here. But I like taking Josh Reynolds, who's had 9 double-digit PPR games in the last 2 years, faced very little established competition in Denver, as well as facing the Bengals in Week 17, who we've already drafted 2 players from, and if you're going to break ties, going with correlation is a fine way to break a tie. So our draft is a 2693 build. That's been the second most popular build on DraftKings over the last 2 years, behind 3683. It's a build which we know is going to work. With Lamar and Purdy, I didn't feel the need to add a third QB to kind of get us towards the 3683. And I didn't feel the need to push this one towards 10 wide receivers because it would have meant sitting at 5 running backs or going to 2 tight ends. And with George Kittle, I want 3 tight ends more often than not. And at running back, even though we had 2 in the first 7 rounds, I still feel like 6 is a better number to be at when we were taking some dart throws later on. Looking back at the draft, I wonder whether I should have taken Xavier Worthy over James Cook. Despite the value on James Cook, maybe seeing what I could have done at running back later, that kind of pivot would have allowed me to get more wide receivers earlier, and perhaps I'd feel slightly better about his wide receiver room. But on the whole, pretty pleased with how this went. I want to leave every draft with at least 2 quarterback stacks, and we got that with Ravens stack featuring 4 players and the Niners stack featuring 3 players. Added to that, we've got 3 more offenses with 2 players on them: Buffalo, Seattle, and Cincinnati. Betting on good offenses, it's always going to be a good idea. If one player hits on a good offense, another's likely to do so as well. We don't need the quarterback for it to be a good idea to stack these teams up. We've got no correlation for Week 17 for the Ravens when they play the Texans. That does feel like a bit of an oversight in this draft. But the Niners play the Lions in Week 17, the Bills play the Lions in Week 15, and then the Jets in Week 17. The Seahawks play the Packers, Romeo Doubs in Week 15, and then the Bears with possibly Khalil Herbert on them in Week 17. So there's lots of little correlations along the way. Detroit and Jahmyr Gibbs, though, gives us a triple header of correlation in Buffalo, Chicago, and San Francisco. So if Gibbs goes on a legendary run, we have the correlation to carry us there. I'm always looking at correlation stuff as I draft. I use the Spike Week overlay tools. If you want 40% off them, hit the join button down below and choose the gold membership tier. To hear more about why I love the elite quarterbacks and the elite tight ends this year, check out these videos and hit the subscribe button down below. Underdog live drafts on Mondays, DraftKings live drafts on Wednesdays, a constant stream of best ball and dynasty and redraft content coming your way, helping you win in 2024.